Hello, my name is Marcus.
I'm Pedro.
I'm Mackenzie Cole, and in this presentation, we will share about the Harlem Renaissance and about the issue of Marxism. We will also introduce the historical figure W.E.B. Du Bois, who he was, and how his name landed on the pages of history books. Along with these things, we will also demonstrate how W.E.B. Du Bois impacted our nation and his involvement in the Harlem Renaissance and his involvement in the theory of Marxism and how he lived his life. William Edward Burghardt Du Bois was born in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, where he would grow up as one of the only Black people in town. He grew up in this small town with only a few thousand people who lived there, and he was among some of the only Black people who actually lived in town. The date of his birth was February 23rd in 1868, at the beginning of the Reconstruction era after the Civil War. Du Bois lived without his father, who left his family when his son was young, and Du Bois began living and working on his own at age 16 after his mother died. While working at a local mill as a timekeeper, Du Bois became the first African American to graduate from his town's high school called Searles High School. After this, Du Bois attended Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee to get his bachelor's degree, and then he attended Harvard University to get a second bachelor's degree. Du Bois also spent a few years in Germany at Berlin University and became the first African American to earn a PhD from Harvard University. Already in his first 27 years of life, Du Bois was defying the odds, which is amazing to look back at.
The Harlem Renaissance first began when many African Americans migrated from the South into the North, trying to find new opportunities as well as escape the Jim Crow laws in the South. There was a popular notation of cultural separatism, believing that an intersection couldn't be between Black cultural experience and Euro-American ethnic form. It is here where the renaissance of collective artists, writers, musicians, and other creative integrated African folk, heritage, and history into the broader movement for racial equality. Aidan Locke described the Harlem Renaissance as a spiritual coming of age, due to how the African Americans were changing their views on their race. Instead of having a feeling of disappointment, they were transformed and had pride in their race. The Harlem Renaissance had an impact on everything from the civil rights movement to modern art and culture. The era highlighted African American artistic creativity, inspiring future generations of artists and intellectuals.
Hello, my name is Marcus, and I'll be talking about William Edward Burghardt Du Bois, who took part in the Harlem Renaissance. He was considered one of the central figures and former father and mentor to many key figures throughout the time. Also, his art and literacy was used as propaganda to make a powerful weapon that all work should be a way in helping the African Americans gain respect and status. Also, he had a lot of control in the movement. He had many ways he wanted the movement to keep on working throughout the time.
Marxism. Karl Marx is said to be treated as a revolutionary and an activist rather than a philosopher. Marx's work has inspired many and formed a foundation for many communist regimes in the 20th century. Marxism, named after Karl Marx, in general terms, means the worldview of social, economic, and political conditions. Karl Marx interpreted the political economy of the entire capitalist world and arrived at the conclusion that the economically powerful class, which is capitalists, exploits the entire society for its own benefits. He had not only exposed the naked character of exploitation, but also pointed out vehement protests against this exploitation. Also, Marx argued that all capitalist profit is ultimately derived from the exploitation of the worker. Du Bois was also a socialist, though for most Americans, socialism and Marxism is a distinction without a difference. Socialism in Du Bois' mind meant alleviating the worst effects of market capitalism, not necessarily doing away with capitalism altogether. Du Bois used Marxism to protest American imperialism and capitalism through his Pan-African affinity for Ghanaian revolutionary and Prime Minister Kwame Nkrumah. Du Bois has accomplished a lot in his career, Marxism being one of the factors influencing his success. Du Bois is also considered a participant in a Marxist tradition in the way that his Pan-Africanist arguments related by distance of Marxism, which ultimately led the way to influence as a civil rights leader.
Du Bois had done so much in his life, as he was described as a sociologist, a socialist, a historian, a civil rights activist, a Pan-Africanist, an author, a writer, and an editor. He taught in colleges in Ohio, in Pennsylvania, and Georgia, and he founded the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and then he also led the Nigeria group. He spent his career doing different things to help the advancement of Black American rights, but he was also an author at a very pivotal time. During the Harlem Renaissance from 1910 to 1934, Du Bois was the director of publicity and research for the NAACP. He was the author of the magazine The Crisis, and this magazine was a very influential form of propaganda during the time when art was very relevant in the Harlem Renaissance. Du Bois featured many forms of art in the magazine, such as poetry, stories, plays, literature, and more. Du Bois stated that he felt that art is a form of propaganda, and he allowed certain art to be featured in his magazine to demonstrate that Black people wanted to enjoy art freely. Du Bois' ideas were expressed in his magazine, leading to a huge impact in the new Negro movement. Thank you for listening.